Turmoil on the streets of India from Samastipur to Sikandrabad. Young men literally up in arms against the government's new policy to enlist soldiers into the military. I'm Barkha Dutt, and the images that we are seeing, and we can bring some of them up now from across India, are more than disturbing. More than 30 trains have been set on fire. There are highways that are blockaded. Police is having to open fire, and even in cities like the national capital, at least 3 gates leading to metro stations have had to be cordoned off. Bihar and UP are the epicenter of these protests. Remember, this is about Agnipath, the new recruitment policy that seeks to bring in men and progressively women into the military for a period of 4 years, after which 25% will be re-enlisted. Given these protests, how should the government and the military respond? Let's introduce our very distinguished panel today as we look at day 3 of the protests against Agnipath. It was meant to be a showcase scheme, but it has divided even the military community, with many veterans expressing anxiety about how it may change the very ethos of the Indian military. Joining us on the program today is General Bhatia. General Bhatia, of course, Vinod Bhatia has been the Director General of Military Operations. He's one of those who has expressed grave disquiet at this scheme and is now saying, for the sake of India, I hope it works. Joining us on the program today is also Colonel Thapar. Colonel Thapar is both a veteran himself and also the father to Kargil hero Vijayan Thapar, who, of course, laid down his life in the line of duty in the war of 1999. Also joining us on the program, General Atta Hasnain, who's been the General Officer Commanding of the 15 Corps. Welcome, General, as always. And also another former General of the 15 Corps, General Satish Dua. So welcome, everybody. And as I said, this is a disturbing day. The fact is that there are very grave questions, grave concerns, legitimate concerns, but of course there is no place for violence, no place for arson. But let us also step back and look at the fact, General Bhatia, that the army has not recruited anybody for the last 2 years. And there has been a major disquiet in that age group that the Agnipath program is trying to target. And we are now seeing that rage spill over onto the streets of India, with one life lost as well. Your thoughts today, General Bhatia?
Yes, the army is not recruited for the last 2 years. That was due to COVID. That's what's been said, and possibly yes. Unfortunately, the aspirations of the youth who had practiced recruitment, who had coached for recruitment, who had wanted to join the army for the last 2-3 years, they've gone through a certain stage of the process of recruitment and reached the last stage prior to the final exams. And they felt, I suppose, they felt cheated. They felt dejected. And that is why we see violence. Though violence is not the answer. Unfortunately, violence is not the answer. Especially if you go to the soldiers in the Indian Armed Forces, so violence is definitely not the answer. Protest, make your voice heard, but no violence, please, because that is against our nation, against our ethos in the armed forces. We don't protest. You have to obey the authorities. But the fact remains that they had certain aspirations. They had they were looking forward to joining the army, and certainly they were cut off from after the Agniveer scheme came out. Not only they were not to be recruited for career in the army, but also they were overage, because the age put down was 21.5 years, and the complete selection process was to restart again. So that is something which I think transition management from normal recruitment to the Agnipath scheme, and the Agnipath scheme has rolled out. But when it is rolled out, we should ensure 3 things, the 3 T's: no turmoil, less turbulence, and good transition management. So that, unfortunately, has somehow been lacking in this. And we just rolled it out on the 14th of June without thinking what will happen to the 1.2 or 1.3 lakh aspirants who had cleared most of the exams except for the final exam.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, the government has offered the first olive branch given these massive protests. A one-time waiver in year 1 is now raising the upper age limit from 21 to 23. But, is that going to be enough to assuage the anger on the streets? General Hasnain, this leads me to a question that has been puzzling me at least a great deal. In an organization which literally is committed to taking a risk to one's life for the nation, why would there be such a high risk change without a pilot project? Why, for example, could we not have picked up one unit to test this in, to modify it as needed, and then rolled it out? Why this disruption? Even those who support this scheme are asking this question. Jalal Hussain.
Thank you, Barkha. Thank you for having me on your program, the very, very important program this afternoon. And let me start by endorsing every word which has been said by General Vinod Bhatia, my very, very able coursemate. And I share his concerns completely. Let me bring out another aspect to it before I actually come into your question. And that is 75 years we have followed a system. The system of current recruitment, the system of terms and conditions for our Jawans, for the person below OR cadre as such, below officer cadre as such. Suddenly a change takes place. Yes, turbulence will take place. There will be resistance to it. Of course, these photographs which you are showing is no answer to it. Completely endorse what John Bhatia said. No answer to it. People aspiring to come into the armed forces cannot even dream of doing things such as this. We don't want such people in the armed forces at all. But having said that, yes, there could have been a pilot project. But my explanation perhaps for it is that 2 years were lost in this process of the pandemic. Perhaps to my knowledge, this scheme should probably have come out in 2020 or so. It was being contemplated in that manner, perhaps. I'm not very certain that I'm absolutely right as far as that is concerned. But 2020, 2 years it got pended. Perhaps the government now wanted to do this in a bit of a hurry and put it across and test it out and see. Probably they took their feedback from various concerns, from various people here and there, perhaps may not have got the right feedback. And that is what has led to this kind of a immediate response from them. The biggest issue which is concerning the young people at the moment is what is their future after 4 years? 4 years, at the moment, they are under the current system. It is 15 years, extendable to 17 years. And then based upon the promotion avenues, they go up to 28 to 30 years of service, which is obviously a full career with pensions also at the same time sanctioned and granted to them. But the turbulence here is primarily because of the apprehension of what do you do after 4 years. And I think that is the prime issue that needs to be considered by us, whether the pilot scheme was there or not there. Now it has not taken place. Let's make the best use of the situation now to see how best can we tweak it to make sure that what is being sought is optimized to the highest levels.
So, one of the points I think General Bhatia has been making on this program and on his public statements is that there are two aspects to this, General Hasnain, and then I'll come to General Dua and Colonel Thapar, the tangible and the intangible. The tangible is about economic security, what happens after 4 years, but there's also the intangible, the ye dil mange more josh of the military. When you move a military such as ours from a professional serving army to a contractual army, or rather to a contractual military, does its essential character not change with it, General Hasnain?
See, Barkha, what you say is not entirely wrong. But at the end of the day, just remember, after 4 years, 25% people will get their will get a career option. In the sense, by selection, a career option. And over a period of time, these are the people who will serve out. So a majority of the unit, as already brought out by the Vice Chief, by 2032, 50% will be the variety which is entering through this Agnipath scheme, and 50% will be the old scheme. Now, those who have gone by the Agnipath scheme would have also gone on to enjoy the benefits of a career beyond 4 years. So what you're looking at is essentially a set of people who are there with you for 4 years. Take your minds back. When in 1963, 1964, you brought in emergency commission officers into the army, thereafter you introduced the short service in 1967 or so, you also had a set of officers serving together, ex-MDA permanent, direct entry permanent, short service officers, emergency commissioned officers. The Jazba did not go down. The passion was all there, right? So I'm not sure about what the mathematical modeling is at the moment, that 10 years down the line, what will be the percentage of people in an infantry battalion, for example, who will be purely the Agnipath entrants, who are there for 4 years at that particular time. But I think
Yeah.
the permanent cadre which is there will take them all along. And
Yeah.
the overall ethos of the army is such that I think it can go take everyone along with them for the larger good.
Well, for the sake of all of us, I certainly hope you're right, and your optimism is comes true. But lots to unpack here, General Dua. Major Navdeep, who's a friend of all of us, who's a lawyer as well as a soldier, he did some basic math. In an interview to me, he told me that if even instead of 4 years, the tenure had been 5 years, then perhaps our soldiers could have availed of gratuity, which is a one-time payment. He also spoke of Coast Guard models. He said that there were schemes available where you could have 10-year short service commissions and at least then have a kind of pension scheme that is available for civilians. I'm bringing this up because have we been sensitive to our Jawans? Who, in the words of Major Navdeep, even today, so many of our ex-servicemen end up as, let's say, ATM cards because they're not able to get a successful lateral induction. General Dua.
Barkha, I have had private discussions. I have had discussions with Navdeep, Major Navdeep, in private, and I've also seen him in discussion with you on your show.
Yes.
I do understand what you're talking about, but let me try to break this down into two things. One is what Navdeep is addressing, but before that, there is the larger part of the scheme is about how a soldier will serve for 4 years, how it will uh, not affect or not affect the combat power of the military. You use the term contractual army. How that will pan out and how they will enmesh themselves in the jazba and ethos of the Indian army, and so how they will turn out to be as soldiers is one part. The second part, what you refer to now, is about the severance package, which includes the gratuity, pension or the lack of it, and also in the insecurity arising from 75% of them have to be out in the civil street again to search for jobs, and for which some assurance are forthcoming and some more are required. So let me talk about the first thing in very brief, and I come to
Yeah.
the second part. The first part is about soldiering. Let me remind you, while see, there is like General Hasnain also perhaps said this, but there is always resistance to change. Change management is going to be the key over here. In the 70s, up to the 70s, the color service of a soldier was 5 to 7 years. It's only later that we increased the service. So we did have short-term soldiers earlier as well, and we fought 65 war and the 71 war with that. So I mean, we haven't done badly. 71 war is a good example, shining example. So that is as far as soldiering is concerned. That there will be challenges for the leadership, and I've written about that in a couple of articles as well. There will be challenges for the leadership, which Indian Army leadership is very capable of meeting the challenges, is my view. Okay.
Okay.
Now coming to the second part, which is what after the 4 years for the 75% who are out. Look, there I concede, and most of this anger on the streets that you see is for the second part. Uh, while one does not endorse this violence, everyone has spoken about it. I'm not repeating that. For this, the ownership has to be taken by the government. Because it cannot be left to the army or armed forces to take care of their aspirations afterwards. For some announcements have been made by some states, and the home minister has made some announcements, but those are not really firm assurances. There are no job guarantees. We'll have to incentivize this a little more, besides opening up some avenues for them and just saying that they are motivated and disciplined people, so they will be able to find jobs. That might
Yes.
be. For example, I'll just give a small example from the US Army. When US Army has a 2 year term soldier, then he does graduation at government expense. So there are other things that the government also has to take ownership, put their heads together, and come up with some better incentives for these people. And last sentence, I think the proof of the pudding will lie in tasting. We'll have to let the scheme roll out. At the end of it, let's see how it actually materializes or how it pans out when the first lot is out.
Colonel Thapar, let me bring you in again. Like General Bhatia, I know from previous programs on this platform that you did not want this scheme to be operational, and you did not think that reducing military pensions and indeed reducing the number of soldiers in the military should have been a guiding reason. What do you feel today as a veteran, as the father of a war hero, when you see these young men? And again, I think it's a given that none of us endorse the violence, so let's just take that as a given. What do you feel, sir, when you see all these young, angry, desperate? Because there's a quality of desperation also to these men on the streets, Colonel Thapar.
Well, actually, Barkha, my frank thoughts are that this change, which is a very huge change that has taken place, it should have been anticipated that these kind of things are likely to happen. And therefore, the change management must have been done more delicately. For example, the boys didn't know about the scheme till it was put in their face. After 2 years of waiting, they are just put with fait accompli that here it is and this is the scheme. So there is a pent up anger on that kind of an issue. And even normal agitation, it has morphosized itself into violence because of certain instigations. So my submission is that
Okay, Colonel Thapar appears to have
handled more carefully, more with much more maturity, not in bits and pieces. After this happens, then you give something else, 1 year more, 2 years more, some money more. So that is not the way this should have been done. The whole package should have been made known to the people well in time when it was being processed and when it was being done, so that these boys whose future life is going to be affected are quite aware of what is happening about them. The other thing is about what General Hussain has said about the emergency commission. Well, actually, there was an emergency at that moment of time. Where is the emergency now to resort to this kind of a thing? There was a serious emergency. I was there myself, and we were from IMA also. Our training was cut short, and we went away to the borders. So there was a real emergency then, and the steps taken then cannot be compared with the steps taken now. I'm afraid if you had made this well known, publicized it, educated the crowds that this is the new scheme that is coming, then possibly this kind of a reaction may not have taken place. So I
think that's a very good point, and I want to take it to General Hussain and then back to General Bhatia. Where's the emergency? What was the hurry? Think of these men who have been preparing, waiting, no recruitment rally over the last 2 years. They're waiting, they have an aspiration. At least 2022 could have gone according to the old system. In that time, you could have created awareness, you could have explained the scheme properly, you could have explained its incentives, it positioned it differently. Where is the emergency, General Hussain, as Colonel Thapar asks?
See, Barkha, first of all, the trigger for this issue on emergency is not what I said. I was quoting that as an example to tell you that people of different entries can function together very well. I also understand fully well that 1962 there was a great emergency which lasted till 67 and all these measures were taken. That's a completely different issue. Let's not mix this up at all here, right? I only give you an example that people from different entries can work together. So similarly, I said people from Agnipath, people who are from the regular cadres, people who make it to the 25% regular cadre can all get together and work extremely well as a part of the Indian Army's ethos. That is all what I was saying. The second issue in this, which I would like to interject into this, it's important that the assurances being given today. You see, we are talking about this 4-year business, that after 4 years, what happens, where do these people go? There are promises being made today. I can assure you these promises were made in 2003, 2004 as a part of the AV Singh committee. I was in the military secretary's branch that time. So I'm quoting you this example. Right? There is a cabinet approval on the fact that there will be appeal factor. Appeal factor would mean that officers of the Indian Army who do not make it into their promotions in the higher ranks will start peeling off at different stages of service and get absorbed laterally by different organizations such as the CAPFs. This is on record, but it was never executed because everyone closed ranks on it. So if today people are saying that assurances really don't mean much, I would strongly recommend that the government could even consider legislation. If you have
Yeah,
legislation
but
and
then
if you have a bill, if you have a
let
bill,
there be a guarantee. Let there be a guarantee, because at the
that's what
moment,
I'm
what
saying. If you have a
General,
bill and you make it into a law, obviously then it's illegal to deny these people those vacancies at that
and,
stage.
and let's say this announcement had come alongside such a law, or such a legislative draft that we've been able to see, because at the moment, General Hasnain, all we've been told is that there will be priority for induction into the CAPF, the Central Armed
Absolutely,
Police
absolutely. That's
Force.
exactly what has come.
But yeah,
But as I
priority is
said,
not a promise. Priority is not a promise.
that's what I'm trying to get at, that you need a bill. I take you back to another thing. In 1986, when the US Army was having a major problem on the issue of theaterization and integration, they finally brought in the legislation route, right? They brought in the Goldwater-Nichols Act. And as a result of that bill, it became a law to make sure that the armed forces would work together. And they worked together thereafter. So if you really are stuck at the end of the day, the best thing in a democracy is to go ahead with legislation.
General Bhatia, I would like to remind our audience that you said that even as a paratrooper used to risk, you found this too risky. As the cliche goes, why mend something, or why fix something that isn't broken? Uh, do you believe that this reform was needed at all? Do you believe its driving spirit is to make our military younger and leaner, in keeping pace with new technology, where the modern war will not necessarily be fought always with boots on the ground? Or do you believe that there's an economic imperative to this decision? And are you feeling even a little more optimistic about the intangibles, about the very ethos of the military not changing, where the soldier's first loyalty is to his paltan?
But I think the end aim, the end state which should be there would be combat effectiveness. Does it enhance combat effectiveness? The answer is a definite no. The second thing is, does it meet the aspirations of the youth? No, had the scheme met the aspiration of the youth and enhanced the combat effectiveness, I would have been for it totally. And there has been some congruence between the two. You have the youth now throwing stones, pelting stones. No, this is not the youth you want in the armed forces. Definitely not. So does it meet the aspiration of youth? I think it does not for the time being. And not only it does not meet, what will happen is the youth will now prefer to go to the CAPF, to the state armed police, to the state police. Why should it come for 4 years? I see no reason why it should come. Despite assurances, if you give assurances, give him guarantees also, then there are problems of ticket punching. He'll come for a ticket punching of 4 years, not take risks at all. The third thing is, and I must say so, is what you call the economic compulsions, the budget. Yes, we need to optimize the budget. There's no doubt about it. There are competing parties at national level. So we'll have to do what the budget is. But the budget cannot be the driving force. And if you want to optimize the budget, there are many other ways of doing it. We are part of the Shikha committee. We have certain recommendations. There are other committees to this. There are ways and means of doing this. And you don't have to do it all of a sudden. That's another thing.
Can you elaborate? Can you elaborate on your first point, that you believe the combat effectiveness of the military will be hurt? That's the most important thing we need to discuss as a nation. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I will do that. At the cost of repetition, armed forces are meant to ensure peace through defense preparedness, through operation readiness. Now, does it impact the operation readiness and defense preparedness? It does impact, because we're changing a tested system, a time-tested system, and time-tested organization. We are a functional organization. We have proven our worth from 47 to this day of 17th of June 2022. Everything has been proven. We have not lacked anywhere. So we are changing a system for the better. Yes, definitely do it. But try it out first. And combat effectiveness, will it impact? Yes. How do you expect a soldier to get the attitude in 4 years' time? We talk about 6 months of training. 6 months training. Training is what? Training is in 3 parts. Knowledge, skill. Definitely 6 months good enough. What about the attitude? It takes a long, long time. Any management student will tell us this. So it is. I'm not talking science. I'm not talking rocket science. So we are changing. We are actually hitting at the combat effectiveness of the armed forces, especially in the interim term, till we get the things right, till we get it sorted out. No, We are talking about the US Army, we're talking the Israeli Army. Israeli Army is totally different. No, they're massive retaliation. The US Army, you talk to them, I have had 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. That way, Atta should be the, he should be the first citizen of in Kashmir. He's got 8 tenures there. And he's not
Yes.
tours. He's got deployments, 8 deployments, 8 tenures. So when you talk of tours and tour of duty, I think we lap up what the West does. West says a bit too much. I'm not for it. We should have Indian in context. It should be Indian in culture. It should meet our needs, our security challenges. It should meet the aspirations of our youth. So that is what I'm trying to say. So if the defense budget is there, we have 600,000 civilian employees paid for the Ministry of Defense. 12 lakh is the combatants. Can we prune that down? Definitely we prune that down. 100,000 pruned. It's not that it's not been done. 100,000 pruned down with the Ordnance Factory Board being corporatized. But there are many other things that can be done. So what I'm trying to do is take a holistic view. Don't just go on to the pension bit only. If you don't look after the soldiers, there's an old saying, if you pay peanuts, you'll get monkeys. If you're not going to pay them, if you're going to give them 4 years and then give them 1 month break and then re-enroll them, I really don't understand this. There are people. There are youth.
Jerudua, you want to come in there on the fighting capacity? Initially when we were hearing about this recruitment policy, it was suggested before it became official that these soldiers would not be sent into combat duty. They would not be combatants. That has turned out to be not true. There was a lot of speculation before the policy became official. Nobody really knew what was going on. Now we know that this is effectively the only way. I, in fact, called General Hasnain this morning and I said, is there going to be half and half? Because I was confused. This is going to be the only way that we are going to recruit soldiers. In 10 years, in my understanding, 50-50 of your units will be men and maybe by then women who are coming in this way and going out. It's a transitory role. We are not the Americans. We are not. We are, our psyche, our reasons for why people join the military, the romance of the uniform, the legends of our military, even the unit. I mean, your own regiment has such a intriguing history. So, General Dua, all that will go. It will evaporate.
No, look. Let me begin this way. This is a radical departure from the past. What is the driving force behind this? The driving force behind this, as it has come out, is trying to to lower the age profile, B, to lower the revenue expenditure in our defense budget, and also by having a fast turnover of soldiers. The younger generation will be more tech savvy as they get along. I mean, it's a known fact that today's generation will perhaps not be as savvy with older generation, not as savvy with the iPads as the younger generation is, and so on and so forth. But if we keep aside the points that there should have been wider consultations, there should have been a pilot project. If you let those things be, because we've discussed that a lot, my take is that the combat effectiveness of this, it is not necessary that it will affect the combat effectiveness to the extent that we are thinking and imagining it to be. We are imagining it to be like that because we have seen no other way. When I pointed out that in the 70s we had 7-year soldier, so then we did have short-term soldiers earlier. It's only later that we decided to give them longer service, and which was not for combat effectiveness, it was for security reasons, giving them job security, etc. So the point is, world over, the armies are younger in profile. Our average age is 32 or 33 in Indian Army as of today. With this, in 10 years, the age will come down to 23 or 20 or somewhere 25. If I could be wrong by 1 odd year.
Yeah, I think it's 26. I think it's 26. Yes.
Okay, it's 26. World over, the armies, and there have been great wars. I mean, we have had our share of very successful and good operations, but world over, the World War II, which was the greatest war that the world has fought, were all very short-term duty soldiers. So to write them off, that short-term duty soldiers will not be able to perform, is perhaps we are hostage to only our own experiences. So, and the government has mercifully given it upfront, that there will be a midterm review, there will be course corrections. So once we did not have a pilot project, but the fact is, when we start unrolling it within, let's say, a couple of years, or when the one rotation of 4 years is done, then we will learn more lessons, tweak the policy where it has to, and of course, at the expense of reputation, I'll say the
Yeah.
insecurities of these candidates, 75% candidates after 4 years, is something the government has to own and find a solution for. But for the combat effectiveness, I think in the new paradigm with the Indian military leadership, when we say that our soldiers won't be able to do this in in the 2, 3, 4 years, Kargil war, Kashmir, every single, or I mean, the bulk of the soldiers and officers who have made the supreme sacrifice are less than 25 years of age. And let's, if we talk of officers, they're commissioned at 21 or
I mean,
22.
it has nothing to do with age. It has to do
No,
with whether you see your life. You know, when Vikram Batra said to me at the war front, "Ye dil mange more," he was in his mid-20s. Every soldier I met at Kargil was
less
between
than
the age of
25.
20. Yes, I
Less
know.
than
But
25, Barkha.
but
So,
but
so point
but
is,
General
a
Dua,
4 year soldier.
but General Dua, I have a question. Do you believe that if I know that I am going to be in the military for only 4 years, and that this is not all of my life? The number of people in the military who tell me that the military is our family. The military is almost like a parallel universe, right? Now, if Vikram knew at that time that his life in the army was only 4 years, not all of his life, not his defining identity, I'm not saying he wouldn't have been brave, but I'm saying, are we being fair to the Vikram Batras of our world? Are we being fair to the Vikram Batras of our country? That is my question. Not that
Okay.
25-year-olds can't be brave.
Right. Allow me to tweak your question or your sentiment a bit.
Yes.
It is
Yes.
not only to do with the fact that I fight bravely because I know that I will be here throughout. I think it is also to do with the fact that with good leadership and motivation, I become a very Joshila regimental soldier very early in life. If you come into a good battalion with good leadership, that's what happens. And as far as being very brave in the face of enemy, in the face of death, I think what would actually have a very tangible effect on that is, what are your death benefits? Sorry for getting into get a morbid thought, but we are being
Yeah.
practical here. That if today for the tour of duty soldier also you just announce that the death benefits in face of enemy will be just the same as it happens to a regular soldier, I think that will also take care of
Yeah.
such fears. So
Let me
all
let
I'm trying to say, allow me one last sentence, Barkha. All I'm trying to say, as far as this change management is concerned, implementation is the key, and I think we should not shy away from trying out something for which I'm sure there are so many considerations
Okay.
and
Let me
discussions
let
must have taken place which we are
sorry.
not privy to.
Okay, let me bring in Colonel Thapar and start taking last comments. I know General Hussain also has to leave shortly. So, Colonel Thapar, I was going to come to you. You've heard the defense and the optimism, as it were, of General Hussain and General Dua. You would say what to them, sir?
Well, actually, Barkha, I am one of those officers, and I'm very sure many of these sitting here, they wouldn't have seen their pay slips. I have never seen my pay slip. So the facts of financial implications and what I will get in case I charge the enemy machine gun, get killed, that thought has never crossed me. And I dare say it never crossed my son's brain also, mind also at that time. My big fear now is what has happened. But there is still to come. A big mammoth change has yet to come. The bigger part of that change, I am not going to spell out here, but it is pending, which has to be
Yeah.
implemented when you actually recruit the people. That is a time when we will have to be very, very sensitive, very careful of how we handle things. Because
But
then we may have a very huge problem on our minds. We'll have a real huge problem on our minds.
But
And
thank you for bringing up this point of not looking at your pay slip, because I want to start taking last comments based on this, Colonel Thapar. I'm coming back to you. I just want to start with General Hussain and then I'm coming back to you. This is where General Bhatia has worried that the ethos may change. Because let's face it, sir, फौज कोई पैसे बनाने के लिए तो जाता नहीं है, right? It's a great life, you know, from toughening you up to all the facilities to the sporting. It makes a full human being out of you. So I'm not diminishing that. But if your aim is to make money, military is not probably where you're going to end up. There is a romance, a josh, and izzat to the uniform, and that's what it's all about. Is that going to be diminished as it becomes a contractual army? I love the fact that Colonel Thapar said कि उनको तो पता ही नहीं उनकी payslip में क्या है. General Hasnain, last thoughts.
Barkha, there's no doubt about it. I have never looked at my payslip. In fact, I've not even looked at the right side of the payslip ever. I was only concerned how much income tax was I paying. That's about all, right? And unfortunately, I used to always pay more tax than probably I was earning at that time. And having said that, General Bhatia's ideas is some, we are cosmates. We have functioned together so many times, both sides of the Pir Panjal. We have commanded divisions together. I can hardly ever disagree with him, because he's a class soldier, as such, so to say. And therefore, I endorse what he says. Yes, there may be a compromise definitely on the ethos of the emerging army. I mean, as you come into the news system, inevitably it has to happen, because you've got a completely radically different system which is going to come into being 75 years after the old system has been in existence, right? Now it's up to the Indian Army leadership to make it happen. And I say that as long as the government of India maintains a degree of flexibility, the Indian armed forces maintain a degree of flexibility for which they are known and provide high quality leadership, I don't see any reason why a new ethos or the same old ethos, perhaps put together differently, emerges all over again. I only want to reinforce one issue, that in the 70s, I still remember it was a very, very difficult thing when we had to pick out people to send them into the reservist cadre. At 7 years of service, I used to find a person married with children living in the local accommodation in a peace station with us, and we had to call him for an interview and tell him, "Beta, you have to go home because you're going on the reservist cadre now." Right? It was a great challenge. It was a great challenge, but we overcame it. And the Indian Army, Indian Armed Forces are known for this, so I have full confidence that we will see it through.
I hope your optimism it bears fruit. Colonel Thapar, I'll let you complete your points, sir. Colonel Thapar, can you hear me? Yeah. Sir, please unmute yourself. Okay. No, we can't hear you. Let me bring in General Dua to make a last comment, and then we'll try Colonel Thapar again. General Dua, go ahead.
So I'll take off from what Colonel Thapar said. When if you say that it is less money now or less terms of service, short terms of service now, if that is going to affect your jazba to be able to face death if required in combat, my point would be, so how much more money would make a man face death happily? I don't think you can put a figure to it.
Yeah, I don't think we're saying that, sir. I think we're saying, are we being fair to the men who are dying for the country? I think it's the reverse question.
Absolutely. The point is, when someone does it, like Colonel Thapar rightly said it, when someone does it, he does it for the unit ki izzat. I don't think you think of Bharat Mata. You think of my Paltan, my whatever war cry that I have, and all of us, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
So the point is, that Josh is created not by pensionary benefits, not by terminal death benefits. It is created by good leadership and motivation. Like General Bhatia says, true, the time is less. What is it less compared to? It is less compared to what we've had so far. I gave you example of 7 years. This is 4 years. So, I mean, there is a difference. Today, everything, attention spans, everything is getting shorter. So in changing context, a new thing is being tried out where a lot of thought must have gone into it, or to which we are not privy. Let's face it, we are all veterans sitting over here. We are not privy to the actual thought process over the 2 years. I do concede, I respect General Bhatia's opinion a lot, always in life, not only in this show. And I'm sure what he's saying is a lot of sense. But I personally don't lose out on hope that we will still be able to make an efficient army with the new terms.
I'm sorry, I've got just a minute left. Colonel Thapar, if you want a brief last word, and I'll ask General Bhatia to wrap for us. Colonel Thapar?
Okay. Yeah, Barkha, of all that you have said, I will just want to quote a line from my son's last letter. where he says that not only this life, he will also join the army in the next life. He didn't know that this scheme will come or something of that sort, and the pay and allowances will be affected. Nothing. His nation, country, Pulton, and himself. His family is. That is all that the army is about. And rest, if we have to recreate that same atmosphere. Otherwise, this army of ours will become a legend about which people will talk 20, 30 years. Oh, it used to happen like that at that time. So that's what I want to submit.
That's just sad to think. I want General Bhatia to wrap this up for us. The Naam Namak Nishan, the soldier always being a soldier never really retires. A soldier is a soldier for life. Will the 4-year stints change all that? General Bhatia, please unmute yourself before you answer, please, sir.
Thank you, Barkha. First, I must thank Atta. He's made my day. Thank you very much. Coming from you, a soldier, scholar, very respected man. Coming back to, army is a way of life. We never bother with it. I salute Karan Thapar, I salute Vijan Thapar. Where did he get the values from? We pass it down to generations. Now, is that going to happen? I'm getting calls from my old colleagues, old soldiers saying, "Sir, हमारे बच्चों का क्या होगा?" Because they have joined the unit after unit. Atta's father was a second generation soldier from the same battalion. He would have joined something else, also he didn't. So what I'm trying to say, it's a way of life. You never thought of anything else. Once you joined the unit meant everything and everything to you. So is that going to be tampered with? Yes. Second thing, we are making too many changes too sudden. It is not only Agnipath and the scheme definitely has this thing. We also are making other changes. We're making change. Your recruitment base is the same, criteria is the same, selection system is the same, but who will come to the army? The last of the lot, right? Then we are changing in the sense that 2 years we've not recruited people. Now you're recruiting 40,000. So your deficiencies are going to multiply. So this man who's coming in for 4 years will have to do double duty, of course, because the authorized strength is far less than the postage is far less than the authorized strength. So I think we have to think it through. I think the government should take the ownership, not the armed forces. The government has to take the ownership. The government has to take the accountability for the success of the scheme and give the leeway and the authority to the armed forces to review the scheme as and when required.
I think that's the
must.
I think that's the most
and one more point, 30 seconds only.
Yeah.
Let the first year, this 46,000 Agnipaths are coming. Let this be a pilot project. Don't start on second, third, fourth year. See what these people do for 4 years. Then go for nothing going to change in 3 to 4 years. 3 to 4 years, the nation's life is nothing absolutely. In armed forces, which is kept in tradition, there's nothing. So let us take this as a pilot project and let's see how it rolls out, how it pans out, how it affects the combat effectiveness and the aspirations of people.
I think that's an excellent point. To not treat what has happened as irrevocable, to not treat the policy thus far as something that is not movable. If you look at the first year as a pilot scheme and have no ego or problem saying it didn't work or it worked, whichever way it goes, I think that is one way of proceeding because, the military is just far too important for anybody to have any cusset positions. You have to adapt with the times, but also keeping that intangible spirit, that Colonel Thapar's brave, heroic son represented, who said, even in my next life, I will be a soldier. To retain that spirit of a soldier being soldier for life, not for 4 years, that is where also our attention has to be beyond pensions and pay slips. Though those two are extremely important for those men out on the streets protesting, though of course we would urge them to steer clear of violence. Thank you, General Hasnain, General Bhatia, General Dua, Colonel Thapar. A pleasure, and take care and have a great evening. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.